Hi, friends. Hello, the world. So happy to be here again. My name is Asel Ormonova. I'm leading this Complaint Free Life podcast, and I invite very amazing people from time to time to talk about different topics. And we started already with some other people, other humanitarians, on transitioning topic because I think that's something that's of interest for many people. And we want to continue that topic, but of course, in the process, we will talk about our stories and how we did it, how we're coping with it, what are the questions that are coming up that for anyone considering should also pay attention. So that's why welcome, Natia. It's a pleasure to have you. So maybe you introduce yourself and tell us your story of how things are, and then we go from there.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Asel, for inviting me to talk about my experience. I hope that might help some other female humanitarian aid workers as well. So this is Natia. I work for the humanitarian sector for last 5 years in different countries, in different areas. But my last experience is working at one of the NGOs in Afghanistan. It's
Mhm.
been 2 years since I'm there, and it's been quite challenging because not only for context, but when I was there, the global pandemic has started, so
Yeah.
that even increased the challenging aspect of it. And then obviously nowadays the situation in Afghanistan is extremely critical, and many things have changed since we talked, since I shared my experience with you. But I hope I hope things go well for everyone in Afghanistan. And of course, I will be mostly focusing on my personal reflections, how it went for me, and what are my learnings, what other female humanitarian aid workers shared with me before I took this challenge, and what are my reflections of that. So I'm happy to talk about that with you, and maybe explore something new as well while we discuss this topic.
Yeah. So let's start with the so you made the focus on female aid workers. I love that. I think sometimes I focus on that, but maybe not enough. So it's great that we're going to do that. So let's talk about maybe three top challenge that we may face as an international aid worker working in a different country, right? So we both have experience. I also used to work in your country, so that's very interesting how we can compare maybe as well.
Yeah, of
So
course.
let's start with that. So top three challenge that we can focus on, and then we proceed from there. What was your experience?
Yeah, I think I'm still at the reflection stage because I'm not fully zoned out from that experience. I will be finishing up my assignment by end of September, and I will be moving out to other organization, other contexts. But I'm still at the reflecting how it was, what I learned during these last 2 years, and what were the challenges. But I yesterday I was asked the same question, but at the professional level, what was the
Mm,
most challenging part? So obviously I share that, but personally, for me, the most challenging aspect was the context. So I came from the Georgia, of course, is or other countries are developing countries. So they obviously have challenges, but not as extreme as Afghanistan, the most
mm,
one of the most fragile contexts. So I think for me that was really, I used to have reality when things just happen for
mm,
granted, but there it was different. You have to really put a lot of effort to make things work. And fortunately, cultural wise, even though it's extremely different culture, it's a Muslim, fully Muslim society. The religion was not that much salient in my case because like people are very nice, extremely
mm,
nice, and that aspect I think really helped out. So I don't really feel like that was a barrier for me in workplace. But challenge was that obviously the inequality that you can see
mm,
between between local staff and expat staff in terms of payment and leaves, etc. So
Mm,
we talked about that briefly. That I felt really kind of guilty that I was in a privileged situation in a very
mm,
unprivileged society. So it really
mm,
bothered me, and I think it's beyond of my control, of course, but that also affected me a lot. So as I
mm,
shared with you, I was doing that. Now I would advise someone else what you advised me, but back then I was doing that. I was feeling guilty that I'm earning so much than the local staff, even though I'm in a very challenging context, very far away from the family, etc. Still, the gap was really high. So I was really pushing myself hard to prove that I deserve whatever I earn, and I
mm,
work twice more or three times more than local staff, so I can at least compensate. So it was kind of my moral approach to it, but that almost burned me out. So if someone I had someone telling me that, you know what, this is the reality of the sector, you don't have any control, and it's better that you balance stuff, etc. So I think that really would help me. But back then, that was my approach. Now I take things easy. I do
mm,
whatever I have to fulfill my roles and responsibilities, but I'm not really pushing through really hard. So that's the second challenge, and the third challenge is obviously like the yeah, I mean, how the humanitarian aid is delivered, it's in a general overall perspective that also kind of bothered me, because I felt like we were doing amazing job providing life-saving assistance, but
mm,
also like the coordination and at the high level, like things are not working in a way that they should work. So I kind of got a bit disappointed with the sector,
mm,
even though I feel like the sector is something that I really belong to, and that gives me fulfillment, that I work for, not making someone a billionaire or rich, but I'm working for helping people. But that is kind of an illusion as well at some point. Going to the field, talking to beneficiaries, of course, helped, but things could be done in such a way better way. So I think the health system is structured, and all the issues that the system has, it became more clear to me, especially in the humanitarian sector. So I think, yeah, this kind of broader um, thoughts affected
yeah,
my personal observations of things,
yeah,
and obviously that's affecting my like how I approach work, how I interact with
mm,
others, etc. So I think,
yeah.
yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing this because I think I mean, many of us can relate to this, no matter which organization you work for, I'm sure. And I think people who are listening to us are also saying, yeah, I had that, or I still have that issue, right? Especially feeling guilty, feeling disappointed, and all of this. And I think what we want to, maybe from our experience, also from my own experience, also, is to say that we can never make things better by feeling guilty. This is what I understood from my experience. And we can also never compensate for anything by feeling guilty. So, in other words, with a negative feeling or negative feeling, unfortunately, always generate more negative results, right? And then negative results don't benefit anyone in the end, even though somehow our brain somehow wants us to believe that that's at least what we can do, but that's only going to harm us and people around us, probably. So, for whoever who's new to this work, maybe what we want to highlight is that we've tried it. You tried it. I tried it in my days as well, working through 24/7, thinking that this will make things somehow magically better. Everyone's going to be feeling equal afterwards, or at least they feel, I don't know, better that we're working nonstop. That's not going to make things better. It's going to make things worse, and don't do that to yourself. So, in that case, I think the best that I could now, reflecting back, the best advice I could give to myself in my young years is to say, decide for yourself, is that the context you want to work in, knowing these system disparities, right? Knowing this, what are you going to do? What are your values towards them? Whether you want to work with them, whether you want to work within the system but against that disparity or do something with it, or you don't want to go to that system at all. So you need to make a decision so that later it doesn't become like a betraying your principles or betraying your morals, because the worst you can do is put yourself in a situation where you're already suffering from so many unknown things, and then on top you layer with your own internal battles of morals, and that will just crush you to burnout, unfortunately, than anything else. So that's, I think, one thing. You could make a decision in advance and then you go knowing what your answer is. And the other thing about the disappointment part, I also so can relate to that. I think my question was, Naita, always is what I'm doing with all the privileges and money and everything that I have, is what I'm doing and producing, is creating the equal result? Meaning, what I'm doing, is it helping people in the end to the extent that I'm spending all the energy, all the money, all the resources, or it's just, moving the needle a little bit, but not really creating all the result that I'm imagining it should result, right? So this was, I think, my dilemma, is that money worth spending? And is that in the end bringing all the results that I was hoping to achieve? And if not, what do I do with it? Right. And I think that's where the disappointment comes, where we think that it's not really getting all the results that we want, that we were hoping for, or that we think we should have, but we don't. And then it's making us disappointed. So in that case, again, I think that the question we want to ask ourselves is that approach is going to bring any results? Meaning, if we keep questioning it, is it going to make things better? If that is, absolutely, let's all question it. And I think we are now in the point, especially after Afghanistan's recent surge, I think we're in the point of questioning many things, including whether aid is really being delivered or not, right? And in that sense, I think the questions should be more systematic and changing more systematic things. But at the personal level, keep questioning that. What are we achieving? Are we achieving any results concretely with our questioning? If not, is it worth keep questioning it and being disappointed at it? Because the problem with being disappointed is that, I don't know about you, but if I'm disappointed, I don't really want to do much afterwards. I feel like
Right.
I want to crawl into bed and then, cry my eyes out, or I don't know, feel sorry for myself, or thinking how unfair the world is, and then just not do anything, right? So it somehow has this effect of paralyzing me a little. So therefore, out of disappointment, I don't really get very productive or do many things. And that's the problem I find. So that's why I'm not saying that we shouldn't be disappointed and we shouldn't do anything about it, but let's use disappointment for a good purpose, meaning change things afterwards. And if we are not changing it, then what else can we do in that situation instead of keep being disappointed, right? So I think these are the things, like at the personal level, we're not talking about um, at the organizational level or at the systemic level, but at the personal level, what do we want to do as aid workers? If we are disappointed once, if we're disappointed twice, do we want to keep doing it, or we tell ourselves at some point, what's the solution, basically?
Yeah, I
So yeah.
totally agree. Yeah, I think disappointment, and especially over the things that we have very little control over. So I think I agree that that's absolutely um damaging, and it affects the motivation, etc. That's for sure. But I think for me, what helped me to understand the sector better, and of course, I'm learning still. It's,
Mm,
I mean, there might be female humanitarian aid workers listening that are in this sector for many, many years. And they might have different reflection. I really respect that. But for me, like being in late 20s and early 30s, and not knowing much of the reality on the ground. Like before, I wasn't at the observer stage, but then I
mm,
just went to it and experienced it myself. So what helped me is just reading a lot about the sector, and also learning from different podcasts, from different like talking to you also was really inspiring for me, because you showed me aspects that I never thought about. So I think
mm,
I was sharing with you that that's the gap in the sector at the moment, that we don't have a community, or we don't have a platform where female colleagues can share some experiences, because of course there is a difference between male and female, and we see aspects in different way. And being a female humanitarian aid worker has a huge impact on the quality of the work we do.
mm,
We have to push back on things that is
mm,
not benefiting female participants of the project, because lately I have to really fight with male colleagues
mm,
that we have to really make sure that our female colleagues can work. And I'm happy that the leadership is also supporting that. But that's a female perspective. So if we don't
mm,
fight on things, unfortunately, some of the male humanitarian aid workers are not sensitive enough. In theory, they're supporting, but in practice, they're
mm.
very pragmatic. So, and also, of course, there are cross-cutting experiences that no matter of gender, everyone experiences. And
Yeah.
of course, there's so many intersectionality, as we talked before, nationality, age, etc. Those things really matter, and people are experiencing that. I personally have experienced, and I'm sure people who are in a different position in having more cross-cutting or more intersectionality aspects to it, they might experience it more. So I think I really appreciate this platform that you created, and I will be really happy to hear other people as well, because that
Yeah.
helped me, like reading, listening, talking, people who are at my level, or who been at my level, or who gonna be in future. So
Yeah.
of course, having different perspectives, it really helps. And especially if someone who has intensive experience of different contexts, and coming from really sensitive background herself, that's really helpful, because some people are talking still from the privilege perspective, which is
Mm,
also very, very important, and they can never ever understand what is the unprivileged perspective of it. And I also observed myself that now in Afghanistan, female colleagues are having extreme challenges. Unfortunately, I can see their perspective, but I'm not experiencing their perspective. So I don't know
mm.
exactly what they're going through. Even though I can say I understand, but it's never the same. So I think someone who has been there, and who that's very important. So thank
Yeah,
you, thank you for the platform.
absolutely. So one of the things that I think would be great, Naita, that we talk about is that in all of this, I think the question that you're raising about we need to fight for our way of working, our way of seeing things, our perspectives to be seen and heard and equally treated, right? I think what would be great to talk about, what are the times when we are fighting for what's ours, and what are the times when we are taking care of ourselves.
Mm,
And because I find it often, and I don't know about others, but from my own perspective, is that in order for me to fight, I really need to do that from a place of having taken care of myself and feeling like empowered um, and wanting to create things that are just, but not out of exhaustion and not out of um, I don't know, desperation, or maybe out of feeling like if I just keep going and doing and fighting for something while I'm exhausted, then I feel like I'm not going to reach the end that I'm hoping for. And then I will just exhaust myself in the process. And then I'm not really capable of having those discussions that I would have had otherwise if I had a rested mind, if I had taken care of myself. You know what I mean? So I feel like I want to encourage all of us to say, okay, these are the topics that I'm fighting for. These are the ways that I'm going to fight for. And this is when I take care of myself. And sometimes when we're fighting, I think we're not really aware of when it's time to take care of ourselves. So maybe this is something that we could also talk about, that our message is that let's fight for, and let's advocate for um, our perspective, our way of doing work, our culture, women's perspective on how we want to create the working cultures, right? We want to go for it and advocate for it and implement, but let's do that in the way that also takes care of ourselves and not exhausted throughout the process. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think self-awareness is really important during this
Yeah.
process, because usually we have everything, but we don't have high self-awareness. We cannot observe what we feel, what we think, or how things are going. So we kind of lose control over that. And it happened to me until I intentionally thought that it's time to have a high self-awareness on certain
Mm,
things, just to just for me to keep my well-being. So I think
yeah.
that's very, very important. But when people reach that level, I am not sure, to be honest. Like, talking to others might help, but or just you have this moment when you're like, okay, now I have to really think what I'm doing, and is it worth for it, etc. So that's very, very important for me. After 1 year, I kind of stepped back and was at the balcony and watching myself and
Mm,
how I was doing things. So that was more kind of
yeah.
helping moment for me, that wait, now I have to really think through of things, because otherwise I cannot keep going. So
Yeah.
that was kind of a moment for me. But some people might have it in the beginning or in the middle, or at the end, etc. And I think this self-awareness is also correlated to the to understanding when you have to stop at some point, because for me, I knew exactly that I had to transition. Otherwise, if
Mm,
I would stay, I would have challenges. It's not that I don't like this sector, I really am committed, but it's
mhm.
more about exactly self-care.
Yeah.
This transition is a self-care for me, and I definitely need
Mm,
this. How it came up, I think the workload itself and the situation, it guides you at some point. Of course,
mm,
there are people who can do it more, and for whatever reason, they're pushing themselves. But for me, I kind of realized that there is nothing worse than my mental well-being. So I have to kind of step out, and maybe in future I go back again. But at the moment, I feel like it's time. So, but this self-awareness came over time. It was not there,
mm.
and I'm sure that some people have different levels of it. I don't know, how was it with you when you kind of realized that it's time, etc. And we talked about that, I know, but I'm also curious to hear from you.
Yeah. So I think for me, definitely one of the things I really wanted to make sure is that I didn't avoid. So I mean, I didn't want to quit because I wanted to avoid. That's my point, I think. In other words, I didn't want to give myself this message that, oh, I can't handle, I don't want to handle, it's too much, and I'm not powerful enough to handle or whatever, and therefore I'm quitting. I didn't want to do that because I did that in 2013. And I realized, so learning from that lesson of myself in 2013, I quit. I thought, okay, I'm too powerless because I was a local staff and I thought everyone is against me and all of these stories that I made up, or maybe some of them were true, but I just didn't want to handle in a way that was healthy for me. And I think at the time I just decided, okay, if I quit, everything will go away and then I will be happy, was my um, belief, right? And I did that, and then I went to another work, totally not related, and then I realized all of my issues were coming back.
Mm.
All of my issues of feeling like I was a victim, or I'm not powerless to do all of this, or I'm just a little person, or whatever the stories that I was coming up with myself, that I needed to take care of, and finally decide, why am I putting myself in the position of being a victim when I know that I'm not, and I have so much power to do whatever I want to do, and I want to also quit if I want to do, I want to transition, I want to do. So that's, I think, one of the biggest lessons I learned, is that I don't want to quit things because I'm avoiding it or because I just think that I'm powerless to handle it. So the other lessons I have is that I want to make decisions from a full freedom of wanting to do something else or wanting to work on this project, no matter what the circumstance is. Because otherwise my brain starts saying, like, you see, you cannot do this because of that, and then I will start having all this reasoning why I can't do this or that, and I don't want to again give myself the message that I can't do something. And if I want to do something, I totally go for it, but in the meantime I know how to take care of myself. But of course, as you said, this is something that you learn in your experience, right? It's not, I mean, even if we tell someone do this or don't do that, it's unlikely they're gonna do that way. And that's good because everyone needs to experience their own way, their unique way. So my experience was that I wanted to quit my humanitarian work after having processed all of this, and after having realized that I can actually do anything I want in life as long as I trust myself, as long as I believe in myself, that I'm confident that I know, and I can create whatever I want to. And then once I had that realization, then I quit. And it felt so good about it. I felt so good about it. And it was no longer, I was avoiding it, right? It was no longer, oh God, if I could just get away from it, everything will be better. But rather, no, it's not going to be better simply because all of these thoughts are within us, right? And all of those thoughts are going to come along with us no matter where we go.
Exactly.
so,
I totally agree. Yeah.
so we can't avoid our way out, basically, is my message. And don't do it to yourself, because I think one thing that all of us need to realize is that we are such powerful human beings. And like, I think Mandela was saying that we are often probably afraid of how strong we are than how weak we are. And I love this phrase, is that we are actually should be probably afraid of how strong we are, and therefore letting our strengths come out and see how strong we can be, then trying to always fix things and saying, oh, I cannot be doing this, or I'm not good at this, or whatever the limiting that we are putting ourselves, just removing all of that and see what the strengths that come out of us. And I think whenever we are in that mode of trying to problem solve, I find that we are so focused on the negative part, on the parts that are not working, and we forget a bit of how much strength and how much power we have to change things in the way that we want to. So that's why I think the other thing I really want to advocate for is that do things the way you want to, trusting yourself, your instincts, your guts, your wisdom within you, whatever that is, even if outside world thinks it doesn't make sense, even if others say, I don't think you should be doing this, right? But you do it because it feels right for you. And as you were saying, Nacha, is that we all, I think, feel that. I think the other thing is we suppress it oftentimes because we want to reason or we want to listen to others, right? But rather feel what's right for you and know where your limits are and know how to take care of yourself with self awareness. That's a wonderful way of doing it. Another way of doing it is, I think, putting yourself where the boundaries are, meaning this is I can tolerate, this is I won't tolerate. And if you make that boundary very clear, then it also protects you, right? It doesn't let you burn out or it doesn't let you go beyond what you want to do. And also making decisions in advance in terms of what's really important for you. And if that's really important for you, then is that really the context you want to working with? Is it, does it really match your values or what you really want to do, right? And if it doesn't, then have the strength to go after what you really want. I think this is, yeah, this is again, this is from years of experience, but I'm sure that everyone can find their way to what they really want if they listen to themselves. And I'm so happy, Meta, that you decided to listen to what's really important for you and you found the transition as an answer. And so, what do you think the next step for you are? How would you proceed from here?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So I definitely want to stay in the sector.
Mhm,
Definitely feel more comfortable, more dedicated, committed, like sense of belonging, as we discussed.
mhm,
It's there, so I definitely want to do that. But for me, it's important that I change kind of a different sector, not sector, but for example, do my professional work in different area, so I can learn something new. I can it challenges me in a
mhm,
professional level, not in other aspects. So I think that will be something for me. It's not that I'm leaving my challenging context to go to the comfort zone. I think I'm a comfort in a comfort zone now. I
mhm.
just need to make sure that that comfort zone is kind of um, worse for it, etc. But there is other aspect that I also want to share with you. So obviously I'm interviewing for different positions, etc.
Mhm,
And then when they ask me like why you want to leave your current job, I they wanted the justification that I give is that it's a choice because
mhm,
I just want to leave the context and
mhm,
I want to have different contacts and different diversity, etc.
mhm.
So first I saw then that might be considered as a weakness that I'm not
Mm,
strong enough to, to kind of be in that specific context and do things that I enjoy, really, really enjoy. So, and then I realized that I kind of was justifying myself, saying that, it's
mm,
so difficult, so challenging, etc. So some
mm.
people could have like some empathy, etc. But then I realized I don't have anything to justify. It's just a choice, and this time the
Yeah.
choice is that I have to move on, and it's time for transition, as you said. So whenever I realize that I try to change my narratives, I'm no longer really justifying myself, but saying that it's a choice. So I think that kind of relates to the point that you made about feeling powerful and feeling yourself as someone who is strong, etc. That really helps because if that's not there, it's really challenging. One layer more challenge than what we're
Yeah.
facing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So one of the things that I think we could definitely encourage listeners to think about is, what are the areas where we're feeling like we need to justify things? Because this is, I think, I talk about with my partner, and then, we talk about different ways of reacting to things, right? Him being a male and me being a female, and we're both from the humanitarian sector. And I think one of the things I noticed through this discussion as well is that oftentimes I have this feeling of wanting to justify things for why I do it or what I do it. And then I ask myself why he doesn't have that feeling, or he doesn't have that sense. And then maybe it's something that we could really look into it and say, okay, why are we having this feeling of wanting to justify if we want to transition, or even if we don't want to transition and stay where we are, even if other people may ask questions as to why you do what you do, or whatever the questions that others may be asking us. But we don't need to justify if we don't want to. And if we are justifying things, why are we doing it?
Mhm.
Right? Are we doing it because we're not really sure of what we're doing? In which case, why we think that? Why we're not sure? And oftentimes, I think people answer to me like, well, because other people would do differently, or other people. So let's not make reference to other people.
Mhm.
because because I think as soon as we make a reference to other people, it's likely we're going to make ourselves unhappy, and that's not good. So what do we want? Me as a cell, you, Natia, what do we want to do? We like our reasons, and even sometimes reasons can be just, I want to do this way. That's it. There is no explanation needed if you don't want to. The explanation, I think, is necessary for ourselves, for our own decisions. And if we like our explanation, go for it, right? Why are we trying to explain the whole world what we do and how we do, and why we want to justify it? And I think that's also part of listening into our wisdom within us, is that we don't really want to know what others are doing. They're doing great. We can learn from them, but what do we want to do? And what's our unique approach to doing things? Right? And we all have our own way of doing things. And what is that? What is that voice within us telling us? And we just go after that without ever having to explain to anyone why.
Exactly. I totally agree. As you said, explanation to yourself is a self-awareness. So
Yeah.
aiming to that is really crucial. If someone is new to this sector and trying to figure out things. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the last point maybe that I want to make in terms of um, the feelings that we talked about, especially feelings that we may be having in the humanitarian sector, that people who continue work, such as, feeling powerless or feeling guilty, feeling disappointed, or other feelings. I think it's crucial that we all remember that we are the one thinking whatever we're thinking that's generating these feelings,
Mhm.
no matter what the circumstance is happening, because we are always reacting to them, right? So if we are in charge of however way we want to feel, then how do we want to feel about it? How do we want to feel about what's happening around us? What are the areas that we want to fight and advocate and make change? What are the areas where we know that we can't, and what we want to do about it, and make decisions about it once and for all, so that they don't get in the way of us enjoying our work and doing what's best. Because as I said before, that if we keep feeling those feelings, then it's unlikely that we're going to do more, because we'll be exhausted or tired most of the time. And I think that's something that's very difficult to handle in the long run. And therefore, I think every one of us is so powerful to make any of the choices and decisions they want to. We just need to let ourselves do that.
Mhm.
And I think that's what, Natia, we want to advocate for. Let us all make choices, decisions that's good for us, that's good for people around us, and listen to what's important for us. And then I think life will just bloom from there. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, just to conclude this, yeah, I think what I would say to myself, if I were in a position to advise myself 2 years ago, I will definitely say that make choices and have high self-awareness throughout the
Mm,
process, and just focus on what is important for you, and as you said, and definitely boundaries is also excellent. Knowing the
yeah.
boundaries is really helpful. I think uh, I think it's difficult to kind of tell people what they have to consider. I was also advised, and I probably not considered most of the advices
Mhm.
until I realized they're useful, or they're, oh well, it would be better if I use them, etc. So it's a process, of course, but yeah, I think what you concluded, those three aspects, they're absolutely necessary for any female young humanitarian aid workers, or it doesn't matter whoever, whatever age it is. It's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in case after listening to all of this, someone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Oh, sure. You have my email, so I'm happy
Hmm.
to share my email to everyone who might need to talk, or who are
Yeah.
in the same level that I am, and they want to share, etc. I'll be
Yeah.
happy. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn and on Facebook Messenger. I actually have all the social media that exists on Twitter. I'm also on Twitter, so I'm very
Excellent.
approachable. So I'll be happy to talk if anyone is interested.
Excellent. Great. So I will tag you in all of these social media, and then people can just text you if they wanted to. Right. So, Natja, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about your journey, and, that allowed me also to reflect on my journey. Every time I talk to people, it's like always coming back to what happened then, what's happening now, right? And where it's going. And I think my conclusion of all of this is that, so I did 10 years of humanitarian work, and I transitioned to a new work as a life coach. And what I'm learning again and again is that all I want and all I can advocate for is dare to do whatever you want to do, no matter what your circumstances. And whenever we do that, we unleash so much power that I think we didn't even know existed, and it just comes out, and it lets us prosper, I think, the way that we didn't even think is possible. So that's why don't limit yourself to thinking like, oh, I can't do this, or I should be doing this, or whatever, but rather do what's right for you. And once you do that, somehow universe takes care of the rest. And I know when I say this, it sounds like very flowery thing, but that's exactly how it's happening. I had so much fear of embarking on my new journey, but now I'm loving it. And I know that it's only in the beginning stage of my journey, but still I can see that whenever we follow what we love doing, we always find a way to make things work.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what I want to advocate for all of female aid workers or not aid workers, whoever you are. Do whatever you think is best for you, and then you know how to take care of yourself and take care of how to make it work. And trust yourself that you can do that, and the rest will happen. So we don't need to know how to do this. We can only know what we want. The rest will happen. So thank you so much. It's
Thanks so
been
much for your
again
time.
pleasure, and yeah, we hope to stay in touch. And thank you so much to
Of course.
all for listening for a bit of a long conversation, but I think it was worth it. Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. Thanks. Brilliant.